The dark truth behind Alcatraz prison, America's most feared island. In the middle of San Francisco Bay, where the water never stays calm, and the wind cuts through bone like a blade, there is a small island that has carried a reputation heavier than steel bars and prison walls combined. Alcatraz Island is not large. From a distance, it almost looks harmless, just a rocky outcrop surrounded by restless water. But for decades, that island represented something far more terrifying than its size suggested. It was a place where the strongest criminals in America were sent when every other prison had failed. A place designed not just to hold bodies, but to crush willpower itself. And above all, it was a place people called simply the Rock. But the real truth behind Alcatraz is not just about escape attempts or famous criminals. It is about isolation so extreme it begins to erase identity. Control so absolute it reshapes human behavior. And a psychological pressure so constant that many inmates never fully recovered, even after leaving. To understand Alcatraz, you don't start inside its cells. You start with the water. Ocean wave emoji, the island that could not be escaped. The first thing anyone notices about Alcatraz is not the prison, it is the sea surrounding it. The waters of San Francisco Bay are cold year-round, often unpredictable, and filled with strong currents that shift without warning. Even strong swimmers struggle to survive more than a few minutes without hypothermia setting in. For prisoners arriving by boat, this was their first lesson. Before they even saw a cell, they saw the distance between the island and freedom. And that distance looked impossible. The island itself had once served military purposes, but by the early 1930s, it had been transformed into something new. The United States federal government needed a prison that could hold the most dangerous criminals in the country, people who had already escaped or caused chaos in other facilities. So they chose the most isolated piece of land they could control. A prison surrounded not by walls, but by nature itself. Because how do you escape an island when the island is surrounded by death? Prisoners did not arrive at Alcatraz gradually. They were transported under strict guard, often blind to what was coming until the final moment. When the boat neared the island, silence often fell. Some inmates would stand still, staring at the gray outline of the prison rising above the rock like a warning rather than a building. Then came the dock. The sound of metal footsteps. The echo of chains. The sharp commands of guards who treated every movement like a potential threat. The gates opened. And the world changed. Inside, the prison was not designed for comfort. It was designed for control. Hallways were narrow, doors were heavy, and every sound echoed unnaturally long, as if the building itself refused to let anything disappear quietly. Cells were small, barely enough space for a man to stretch fully. Steel bars replaced windows. Beds were thin slabs. Conversations were limited and often monitored. But the real punishment was not physical. It was psychological. Because at Alcatraz, time itself became a weapon. Days were identical. Nights were silent. Routine never changed. And in that repetition, something dangerous began to happen to the human mind. Identity started to dissolve. Most prisons rely on punishment. Alcatraz relied on structure. Every prisoner had a strict schedule. Wake up, count, work, eat, return, sleep. But unlike other prisons, even small privileges were restricted. Talking too loudly could result in isolation. Looking at a guard the wrong way could mean punishment. Even simple interactions between inmates were tightly controlled. The result was an environment where silence was not peaceful, it was suffocating. Over time, many prisoners began to show signs of psychological distress. Some talked to themselves. Others stopped talking altogether. A few developed routines that had nothing to do with survival, but everything to do with maintaining sanity. And then there was the hole. A punishment chamber used for inmates who broke rules. It was a small, dark cell with almost no light, no stimulation, and minimal human contact. Prisoners placed inside often lost track of time completely. Hours felt like days. Days felt like nothing at all. Some came out changed. Others came out worse. And a few reportedly never fully recovered. This was not an accident. It was designed. Among the inmates who passed through Alcatraz were some of the most notorious criminals in American history. Names like Al Capone stood out, not because they were dangerous inside the prison, but because even they could not escape its effects. Capone, once a powerful figure outside, reportedly spent much of his time in Alcatraz mentally deteriorating. His influence meant nothing there. His reputation meant nothing. Inside those walls, he was just another number. That was the true power of Alcatraz. It did not care who you were before, only who you become inside. Guards maintained strict authority, but even they were part of the system's pressure. Some were strict to the point of cruelty, others followed rules with mechanical precision. Corruption and misconduct were whispered about, though rarely proven in official records. But prisoners talked. And in those whispers, a darker version of Alcatraz existed, one where punishment sometimes went beyond official rules, and where isolation was used not just for discipline, but for breaking resistance entirely. Alcatraz was officially considered escape-proof. And on paper, it almost was. Between 1934 and 1963, there were 14 documented escape attempts involving 36 prisoners. Almost all failed. Some were caught quickly. Others were found drowned in the freezing waters. Many were presumed dead. But one escape would become legend. In 1962, 3 men, Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers, carried out the most elaborate prison break in Alcatraz history. Using homemade tools, patience, and extreme planning, they carved through walls, created dummy heads to fool guards, and slipped into the night through ventilation routes. When morning came, their cells looked occupied. But they were gone. What happened next is still debated. Official reports suggest they likely drowned in the bay. But no bodies were ever found. And the case was quietly closed. Over time, the story evolved into something larger than the truth. It became a myth. Proof that even Alcatraz was not perfect. But even that escape does not change the larger reality. Most who tried failed. And failure in Alcatraz was not just a return to captivity. It was punishment. By the early 1960s, Alcatraz was no longer sustainable. The cost of maintaining a prison on an isolated island was extremely high. Everything, from food to water to supplies, had to be shipped in. The buildings were aging. Salt flooding was slowly destroying the infrastructure. But there was another problem. The prison's psychological reputation was growing too dark. Public perception shifted. The idea of an isolated prison designed purely for punishment became harder to justify in a changing America. In 1963, the prison was officially closed. But Alcatraz's story did not end there. After its closure, the island remained empty for a short time. Then, in 1969, a group of Native American activists occupied the island, claiming it as their land under historical treaty rights. The occupation lasted for months, becoming one of the most symbolic protest movements in U.S. history. For a place once known for isolation and control, it became a symbol of resistance. Eventually, the occupation ended in 1971. And Alcatraz was transformed once again, this time into a historical site. But even today, visitors report something unusual. A heaviness in the air. Cold spots in empty corridors. Echoes that do not match the movement. Whether psychological or something else entirely, the island still carries its past. Because places like Alcatraz do not forget easily. The dark truth. The true darkness of Alcatraz is not just its walls, or its cells, or even its escape attempts. It is what it did to people. It was not designed simply to imprison bodies. It was designed to control behavior through isolation, predictability, and psychological pressure. And in doing so, it revealed something unsettling about punishment itself, that is when you remove all freedom except survival. The mind becomes the battlefield. Some left Alcatraz. But very few were left unchanged. And that is the real legacy of the rock. Not escape stories. Not famous criminals. But the quiet truth is that isolation, when taken far enough, becomes its own form of destruction.